Before memory, before history, there was only the cycle. The people say that at the center of the world stands a mountain so tall that it pierces the heavens, Starfall Peak. It is there, every 500 years, that the great firebird awakens from its endless slumber. With wings like molten gold and a cry that can split the sky, it rises, soaring across the land, burning all that is old, corrupted, and decayed. Where it passes, forests are reduced to ash, cities to embers. Where its fire touches, new life soon follows, richer soil, stronger rivers, clearer skies. The firebird is not a creature of mercy, nor is it a god of wrath. It is simply the cycle incarnate, destruction begetting rebirth. But not all agree on the nature of the phoenix. Some say it is the world's salvation. Others, its cruelest curse. For in its sacred flame, innocence perishes alongside sin. Now, the signs of its awakening stain the skies. The seasons have begun to bleed into one another. Spring flowers bloom amid winter snows, while summer storms batter the fall harvests. The rivers shrink into dry, cracked bones. The forests whisper in tongues no living man remembers. The elders gather in village squares, whispering prayers to forgotten gods. In the great cities, kings and lords consult their seers and scholars, desperate for a way to halt the cycle. Secret orders, like the Order of the Shrouded Flame, plot to trap the firebird and break the ancient rhythm forever, even if it means dooming the world to slow decay. Meanwhile, rumors travel on the wind, of shimmering feathers falling from the sky, of spectral birds guiding travelers through the night, of old, hidden powers stirring beneath mountains and oceans. The feathered spirits, once considered myth, are said to be returning. Far from the courts and citadels, in a sleepy village at the world's edge, a boy named Raishin watches the red-tinged clouds roll across the evening sky. To him, the phoenix is a fireside story, a distant legend, nothing more. He cannot yet hear the hum of ancient magic in the soil beneath his feet, nor see the invisible threads of destiny weaving tighter around him. But the world is shifting. The first embers have been kindled, and soon, Raishin will find himself at the heart of a choice that could burn away the past or smother the future. The cycle stirs. The firebird dreams. And the song of ash and renewal begins anew. The village of Eldrin was little more than a handful of thatched roofs clinging to the side of a rocky hill, surrounded by thick woods and fields gone stubborn and dry. It was the kind of place where time moved slower than the seasons, where every sunrise felt the same as the last, and every evening ended with the same weary prayers murmured by the hearth. To Raishin, Eldrin was the whole world, and today, the world felt heavier. He stood on the worn path that led to the woods, a basket swinging from one hand, watching the sky turn the color of blood. Clouds boiled on the horizon, low and restless. The air carried the sharp, acrid scent of smoke, though there were no fires he could see. A shiver ran down his spine. "Storm's coming," he muttered to himself, adjusting the strap of the basket over his shoulder. Best not stay out long. Behind him, the village bustled with uneasy energy. Mothers called their children home early. Old men hunched by the well, whispering about omens. Raishin caught snippets, talk of dead rivers, of crops that refused to grow, of strange lights seen above the Starfall Mountains. Talk of the firebird. Raishin shook his head. Superstitions, he thought. Eldrin had always been full of old tales, none of them worth fearing. Still, he quickened his steps into the woods, the shadows swallowing him whole. The forest was thicker than he remembered, the trees looming close like silent watchers. The deeper he went, the darker it grew, the only sounds the crunch of his boots over brittle leaves and the distant croak of crows. He was searching for moonshade herbs, a task given by old Marla, the village healer, who claimed they might stave off the strange sickness creeping into the livestock. A simple errand, one he had done 100 times. So, why did the woods feel wrong? The hairs on Raishin's arms prickled. The deeper he ventured, the more the world seemed to lean in listening. Even the birds had fallen silent. Then he heard it. A faint, broken sound. like the whimper of a wounded animal. Raishin hesitated, instincts screaming to turn back. But something tugged at him, something deeper than curiosity, something like a thread tightening in his chest. He moved toward the sound, weaving between gnarled roots and low-hanging branches. The trees thinned, revealing a small clearing bathed in an eerie silver light. At its center lay a creature unlike anything Raishin had ever seen. It looked like a bird, but not one of flesh and blood. Its feathers shimmered like spun glass, catching the moonlight and throwing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Its wings were torn, blackened at the edges as if scorched by unseen flames. It was no larger than a falcon, but every line of its fragile form pulsed with a fading, desperate energy. It was beautiful and dying. Raishin stepped closer, heart hammering against his ribs. The creature lifted its head weakly, and for a moment, Raishin thought he saw the stars themselves reflected in its eyes. "Help me," a voice whispered, not aloud, but inside his mind. Raishin stumbled back, dropping his basket with a clatter. You can talk," he gasped. The creature, no, the spirit, gave a shuddering breath. "Name?" "Faika, a feathered spirit." The voice was faint, flickering like a candle in the wind. "Please, bind fate, save fire." Raishin had no idea what it meant, but he recognized the desperation in its voice. And without thinking, he knelt beside it, hands hovering uncertainly. "What do I do?" he asked. "Tell me." The spirit closed its eyes. A single feather, glowing faintly, detached from its body and drifted down, landing in Raishin's open palm. The instant it touched his skin, heat lanced up his arm, searing, brilliant, not of pain but of overwhelming purpose. Images flooded his mind, a mountain wreathed in flame, a crimson sun swallowing the sky, a world screaming as it burned, and then silence, green shoots pushing through ash. Raishin gasped, falling backward. The spirit's body began to fade, dissolving into motes of light that hung in the air like fireflies. "Seek the fragments, before the cycle closes." The last words drifted into the night as the spirit vanished. Left alone in the clearing, Raishin stared at the glowing feather in his palm. The forest around him seemed to exhale, a low, guttural sigh of something ancient waking. He understood nothing, only that whatever had just happened, there was no going back. He had been chosen, and somewhere, high above the clouds, a flame long dormant began to stir. Raishin ran. Branches clawed at his clothes, thorns tore at his skin, but he hardly noticed. The glowing feather clenched and his fist burned like a brand, guiding him blindly through the tangle of the whispering woods. The sky had turned a deep, churning red, the sun swallowed behind a wall of dark smoke. Every instinct screamed at him, faster, faster. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. When he burst from the treeline, heart pounding in his ears, the sight that met him knocked the air from his lungs. Eldrin was burning. Flames licked at thatched roofs. Black smoke strangled the sky. Figures in dark armor moved through the streets, dragging villagers from their homes. Raishin recognized the sigil emblazoned on their cloaks, a black sun, half eclipsed, the mark of the Order of the Shrouded Flame. He stumbled forward, disbelief warring with horror. Marla's herb hut was already a pile of charred wood. He saw old Tom lying motionless by the well, his walking stick splintered beside him. Screams echoed from the far end of the village, women and children herded like cattle. "Why?" Raishin whispered, his voice breaking. "Why here?" He had no answer, but deep inside he knew. They had come for the feather. For him.
Hide.
The thought was primal, survival etched into every fiber of his being. He ducked behind the remains of the baker's stall, heart hammering. Peering between the splintered boards, he saw a tall figure striding through the chaos, a man in blackened steel, his face hidden behind a wolf-like helm. In his hand, he held a device, a compass of sorts, but the needles spun wildly, drawn toward where Raishin crouched. They could sense the feather. "I have to get out."
Now.
Raishin glanced around. Beyond the village square, the hills dipped into the ravine, the old hunting trails. If he could make it there, he might lose them. But even as he tensed to sprint, a child's cry pierced the smoke. He turned and saw her, little Malin, no more than 6 summers old, trapped beneath a fallen beam. The armored men were closing in, indifferent. For a heartbeat, Raishin froze, torn between instinct and heart. Then he moved. He dashed from cover, the feather pulsing hotter in his hand. He ripped the beam aside with a strength he didn't know he possessed, scooping Malin into his arms. "Hold on," he whispered, shielding her small body. Shouts rose behind him. The Order had seen him. Arrows hissed past, one grazing his shoulder. But he didn't stop. He ran for the ravine, lungs burning, the ground trembling beneath his feet. They reached the trees at the ravine's edge. Raishin ducked into the shadows, pressing Malin close. She was sobbing quietly, clutching his tunic. "It's okay," he lied, voice shaking. "We're going to be okay." Overhead, the red clouds swirled faster, like a vast storm awakening. Behind him, the village that had been his whole life crumbled into ash and ruin. When the screams finally faded into the distance, Raishin allowed himself to collapse beneath a twisted oak, his body racked with exhaustion. The feather in his hand had dimmed, its light sinking into his skin like a brand. He could feel it now, a thread binding him to something vast and ancient. There was no going back to Eldrin. There was no more ordinary life. Raishin looked down at Malin, her face tear-streaked, but sleeping now, exhausted from terror. He looked at the broken horizon, where smoke blotted out the stars. He looked at his own hands, burned but steady. What now? He thought. But deep within him, a voice, the same voice that had spoken in the clearing, answered. Seek the fragments. Find the truth. Decide the fate of the cycle. The next morning dawned gray and brittle, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise. Raishin crouched near a thin trickle of water, washing the soot and blood from his hands. Malin slept nearby, curled in a blanket of leaves and Raishin's worn cloak. He watched her chest rise and fall, slow and steady. Relief pricked his eyes. At least one thing hadn't yet been taken from him. The land beyond Eldrin was broken, scarred from some forgotten war. Trees leaned like drunks, their bark blackened by old fire. The wind carried the scent of salt and iron, whispering secrets Raishin couldn't quite hear. He knew they couldn't stay here. The Order of the Shrouded Flame wouldn't stop with Eldrin. They would hunt anyone connected to the feathered spirits. And now he was bound. He touched the spot over his heart where the glowing feather had vanished. It felt like a second heartbeat, faint but insistent, pulling him toward something unseen. Food first, he muttered to himself. Then figure out everything else. He foraged for berries, checking every rustle of leaves for signs of danger. His old life, gathering herbs, tending goats, seemed laughably distant now. He needed help. But who would dare stand against an army that burned entire villages? The answer came sooner than he expected. While searching for edible roots near a toppled stone marker, Raishin heard a voice behind him. You're either very brave, the voice drawled, or very, very stupid. He whirled around, fists up, only to find himself staring at a girl perched casually on a boulder. She was maybe a year or two older than him, with a wiry frame built for speed rather than strength. Her clothes were a patchwork of stitched leather and faded cloth, and a pair of wicked daggers hung from her belt. Her hair, the color of storm clouds, was tied back in a messy braid. She grinned at him like a cat toying with a mouse. Or maybe both, she added. Raishin scowled, lowering his fists slightly. Who are you? She swung down from the rock with easy grace. Name's Maisa, she said. And you're trespassing on my hunting grounds. Raishin glanced around at the dead woods, unimpressed. Doesn't seem like much to hunt. Maisa shrugged. Used to be better. Before the world started dying. Her eyes flicked to the place where Raishin's cloak parted slightly, revealing a faint golden shimmer over his chest. Her smile sharpened. You're not from around here, are you? She said. And you're carrying something interesting. Raishin stiffened. He shifted his cloak, hiding the shimmer. It's none of your business. Mysa stepped closer, casual but deliberate. In these lands, everything is everyone's business, especially things that glow. For a moment, Raishin considered running, but something in Mysa's stance told him she could catch him easily if she wanted to. He braced himself. I'm not looking for trouble. I just need food. A safe place for a child to rest. Mysa's expression shifted at the word child, a flicker of something, sympathy, maybe, passing through her eyes. How much food? She asked, voice softer. Enough for a journey, Raishin said carefully. I'm heading north, toward the mountains. Mysa raised an eyebrow. Ambitious. She circled him once, assessing. Tell you what, farmer boy. I could use some company. It's dangerous to travel alone these days, even for someone as talented as me. Raishin frowned. And what do you get out of it? Mysa grinned. Maybe I'm just sentimental. Or maybe, she said, voice dropping lower, I recognize a dead man walking when I see one. She held out a hand, palm up. Partners? Raishin hesitated. Trust didn't come easy after watching his world burn. But alone, he and Malin wouldn't survive another week. Reluctantly, he shook her hand. Her grip was strong, calloused. Real. As they returned to the ravine to collect Malin, Raishin couldn't shake the feeling he had just made a bargain he didn't fully understand. Above them, the red-streaked sky rumbled, a low, distant warning. The cycle was moving, and Raishin had stepped onto a path with no way back. Traveling with Mysa was like trying to hold on to smoke. One moment she was beside him, swapping jokes with easy charm. The next she was vanishing into the undergrowth, scouting ahead with silent steps. Raishin struggled to keep up, juggling the weight of Malin, who rode piggyback most of the way, and the gnawing sense of uncertainty twisting inside him. The land grew harsher with every mile. The trees thinned, replaced by jagged rocks and dead soil. Strange stones jutted from the ground like broken teeth, their surfaces carved with ancient, half-erased runes. The wind carried the scent of dust and something older, something that made the hairs on Raishin's neck stand on end. This place feels wrong, he muttered. Mysa, crouching on a boulder ahead, flashed a quick smile. Welcome to the unhallowed lands. She leapt down with a grace Raishin envied. Old war zones, she said, tapping one of the cracked stones. From back when gods still walked among men. Or so the stories say. Raishin shifted uneasily. You think it's true? Mysa shrugged. Doesn't matter. All that's left now are ghosts and bad memories. By midday, the sky had dimmed to a dull pewter, and Raishin was beginning to wonder if they should turn back when Malin, now walking hand in hand with Raishin, tugged at his sleeve. Look, she cried, pointing. At first, Raishin saw nothing but more rocks and dead grass. Then, half buried under a collapsed hill, he saw it. A doorway. An arch of stone, blackened by time but still standing, framed by twisting roots. Strange symbols ringed its curve, and beyond it yawned a stairway descending into darkness. A ruin. Mysa was already at the entrance, inspecting it with a thief's professional eye. Old, she said. Very old. Could be treasure inside. Could be death. 50-50 chance. Raishin hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger, but the feather burning beneath his skin pulsed harder, as if drawn to the place. We have to go in, he said. Mysa raised an eyebrow. We. You don't have to come, Raishin said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Mysa laughed softly. And let you die alone? Not my style. Inside, the air was cool and heavy, thick with the scent of damp stone. Their footsteps echoed eerily as they descended the spiraling stairwell. At the bottom, they entered a vast circular chamber. The walls were lined with crumbling mosaics, depictions of great birds wreathed in fire, armies clashing beneath darkened skies, crowned figures kneeling before a flame. Most of it was too worn to read, but Raishin caught glimpses, a shining egg atop a mountain, a feather drifting through blood-soaked fields. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal, and on it a second feather. This one shimmered a deep crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat. Raishin stepped forward, almost without thinking. The feather seemed to call to him, whispering in a tongue he didn't understand but instinctively trusted. He reached out. Wait. Mice's voice was sharp, cutting through the trance. She moved between him and the pedestal, dagger drawn. Listen, farmer boy, she said, voice low. Not everything that shines is a gift. Sometimes it's a trap. Raishin hesitated. How do you know? Mice's eyes flickered. For a heartbeat, Raishin thought she might actually tell him. Instead, she smiled bitterly. Because I've fallen for worse. Before Raishin could press her, a low rumble shook the ground. From the darkness beyond the chamber's edges, shapes began to emerge, twisted mockeries of birds and beasts stitched together from ash and bone. Their eyes burned with cold blue fire. Maisa cursed, stepping back to back with Raishin. Guess we woke up the neighborhood. Raishin gripped his knife, a useless, flimsy thing, and Malin whimpered behind him. The first creature lunged. Instinct took over. Raishin thrust the knife forward, and the feather inside him flared. A blast of heat erupted from his body, slamming into the creature. It shrieked, crumbling into dust before it hit the ground. Raishin stared at his hands, stunned. Maisa gave a low whistle. Looks like you're more dangerous than you look. More shapes charged. There was no time to think, only to fight. The air inside the ruin burned like a forge. Raishin's knife slipped from his hand as another blast of heat erupted from his body, blasting a second creature into ash. His skin shone faintly, veins tracing gold beneath the surface. The crimson feather on the pedestal pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, brighter and brighter. But there were too many. The ash-born creature circled, claws clicking against the stone floor, jaws dripping something that hissed where it landed. Beside him, Maisa fought with a predator's efficiency, her daggers flashing silver, her boots finding weak points with ruthless precision. But even she couldn't hold them all back. We need an exit, Raishin shouted over the screeches. Maisa cut down another beast and snarled, working on it. Malin clung to the far wall, tears streaking her dirt-smudged cheeks, too terrified to move. The pedestal beckoned. The feather gleamed. Raishin didn't think, he just moved. He sprinted toward the pedestal, dodging a lunging creature by inches. The moment his fingers brushed the crimson feather, a jolt like lightning slammed through him, dropping him to his knees. Flashes of memory, not his own, flooded his mind. Flames swallowing an ancient city. A girl with a crown of thorns, laughing as she walked into the fire. Wings made of pure light, snapping open across a starless sky. He screamed, but no sound escaped his lips. The feather dissolved into light, sinking into his chest, a second heartbeat now layered over the first, heavier, hotter, demanding. The creatures howled in rage. Maisa caught him as he stumbled back, her face pale. What did you do? She hissed. No choice, Raishin gasped. The chamber walls began to tremble. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling. Time to go. Maisa barked, grabbing Malin's hand. Together, they bolted for the stairway, the world collapsing behind them. They burst out into the dying light, coughing on dust. Behind them, the ruin shuddered and groaned, then collapsed inward, burying the entrance under tons of stone. Raishin fell to his knees in the brittle grass, panting. Maisa paced in a tight circle, hands twitching. You're insane, she said finally, voice shaking with fury. Do you even know what you're carrying now? Raishin looked up at her, dazed. It's part of the phoenix. Maisa crouched, gripping his chin roughly, forcing him to look into her fierce, storm-gray eyes. It's not just power, she snapped. It's a claim. She let go, standing abruptly, shoving a hand through her hair. You're not just carrying a piece of the phoenix anymore, farmer boy. You're a beacon. Raishin stared at her, chest tight. A beacon for what? For everyone who wants the cycle broken, Maisa said. And everyone who wants to keep it alive. She turned, looking toward the darkening horizon, where smoke still rose from Eldrin's ruins. They'll all be coming for you now. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of things left unsaid. Malin crept to Ration's side, small fingers finding his hand. He squeezed back, grounding himself. "I don't care," Ration said finally, voice steady. "I won't run away." Maisa laughed bitterly. "You think this is about courage?" She crouched in front of him again, softer this time. "You just tied your fate to forces bigger than kings, bigger than gods. You don't even know what's waking up out there." Ration met her gaze, unflinching. "Then teach me." Maisa blinked, startled by the quiet conviction in his voice. She stood, slinging her battered pack over one shoulder.
"Fine," she said.
"Lesson 1. Don't die." She offered him a hand. After a moment's hesitation, Ration took it. Above them, the clouds roiled, a deep crimson bruising the sky. The world was waking, and Ration had set the first spark. The next few days passed in a haze of exhaustion. Ration, Maisa, and Malin traveled northward along the broken trails, moving carefully through half-dead woods and abandoned farmlands. Every village they passed was empty or burning. The world, it seemed, was already tearing itself apart, even without the Phoenix's fire. And Ration could feel the weight growing heavier inside him, the twin feathers pulsing like twin heartbeats, faster with each passing day. They made camp one evening in the ruins of an old way station, crumbling stone walls, a shattered well, nothing more. Ration gathered kindling while Maisa hunted, Malin curled up inside a hollowed-out log, fast asleep. The wind tasted of ash. He was crouching by the fire pit when he heard the sound, a quiet, scraping shuffle. Not the tread of a soldier, not the snarl of a beast. Something slower. Wounded. He rose cautiously, hand hovering over the knife at his belt. A figure stumbled into the clearing. He was a man, ragged and half-starved, wearing the tattered remains of a priest's robe, the symbol of the dawn sun god barely visible beneath the grime. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He clutched a staff that looked more like a broken branch than a proper walking stick. When he saw Ration, he flinched, raising a trembling hand. "Mercy," he rasped. "I have no weapons. No harm." Ration hesitated. His instincts screamed danger, but something in the man's posture, a kind of weary surrender, stayed his hand. Maisa returned then, a brace of rabbits slung over her shoulder. She took one look at the stranger and cursed softly. "A priest," she said, voice dripping with suspicion. The man bowed his head weakly. "Was a priest," he corrected. "No longer." Ration stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man swayed, then sank heavily to his knees. "My name is Brother Edrin," he said, "and I have seen the fire." They fed him, a simple kindness Ration insisted upon despite Maisa's protests. Around the crackling fire, Edrin spoke, voice low and hoarse. "I served the Church of the Dawn Sun all my life," he said. "I believed in order, in salvation through sacrifice. But the signs, the sky bleeding, the earth rotting, I knew." He looked at Ration then, and Ration shivered under the weight of his gaze. The cycle stirs. The phoenix wakes. The end draws near. "But that's not the full truth, is it?" Maisa said sharply. Edrin gave a broken laugh. "No," he said. "Not even the priests know the whole truth. The phoenix is not a mindless force of rebirth." He leaned closer, his voice a harsh whisper. "It remembers." Ration frowned. "What do you mean?" Edrin's eyes glittered feverishly. "I mean the phoenix is not impartial. It does not burn randomly. It judges. It chooses. It carries memories of every cycle, every betrayal, every failure. And this time, it may choose to burn everything. No rebirth. Only ending." Silence stretched across the fire. Even Maisa looked rattled. "But why?" Ration asked, voice barely more than a breath. "Because we failed it," Edrin said, bitter and broken. "Again and again. Every new age built atop the ashes of the last, and every time we rot from within. The phoenix sees. The phoenix remembers." He sagged forward, trembling. I ran from the church because they intend to stop the cycle by force, to bind the phoenix forever beneath the Starfall Peak. They would trade salvation for stagnation. They would trade fire for ice. Ration's heart pounded. Was that what the Order of the Shrouded Flame wanted? To stop the phoenix, not to save the world, but to chain it in decay? And if the phoenix was a thinking, remembering being, what would it make of Ration? What choice would it offer? Brother Edrin slumped fully to the ground, exhausted. Mysa watched him warily, daggers never far from reach. After a long time, Ration rose. He stood at the edge of the firelight, looking up at the bruised, starless sky. Remember, the feather's voice whispered inside him. Remember and choose. He didn't know if he could save the world. He didn't even know if it deserved saving. But he knew this. He would not let the phoenix or the church or anyone else decide for him. He would find the truth. He would find the fragments. And when the time came, he would choose. They came at dawn. Ration woke to the shrill cry of a hunting horn echoing across the ruined fields. A heartbeat later, Mysa was on her feet, blades flashing in the first gray light.
They've found us, she spat.
Ration scrambled up, grabbing Malin, who whimpered in terror. Brother Edrin staggered awake, his face pale as he peered through the crumbled walls. Dark figures in black and gold armor, the Order of the Shrouded Flame, were sweeping toward them across the ruins, shields locked, pikes gleaming. They must have tracked the magic, Edrin rasped. The feathers pulse. They can feel it. Ration felt it too. The power under his skin was boiling, the twin feathers burning hotter with every step the enemy closed. No time for a fight, Mysa growled. We run. She grabbed Ration's arm, dragging him after her. They fled through the crumbling ruins, rubble scraping underfoot, the rising sun bleeding across the sky like a wound. Arrows whistled past them, thunking into broken stones. Mysa led them through a narrow alley of collapsed houses, zigzagging to stay ahead of the Order's tightening net. But they were fast. Too fast. A squad broke off, cutting across the fields to head them off. They're boxing us in, Ration shouted. Keep moving. Mysa snarled. They burst into a dead-end courtyard. Walls too high, too crumbled to climb. Ration spun, heart hammering, as armored soldiers closed from both sides. Mysa put her back to Ration, blades flashing into her hands. We make a stand, she said grimly. Brother Edrin sank to his knees, murmuring broken prayers. Malin sobbed, hiding behind Ration's legs. The soldiers raised their weapons. And Ration felt it break. The twin feathers inside him flared, a white-hot eruption of pain and power. His vision blurred. His skin burned from the inside out. No, he gasped, but it was too late. The ground beneath him cracked. The air screamed. Fire exploded outward in a brilliant shockwave. Soldiers screamed as they were hurled back, weapons melting in their hands. The crumbling walls of the courtyard blackened, split, collapsed. Mysa yanked Ration to the ground, shielding Malin with her body as debris rained down. When the world stopped shaking, Ration staggered to his feet, dazed. The courtyard was a smoking ruin. The soldiers lay scattered, some groaning, most silent. Ration stared at his hands in horror. They glowed faintly, thin trails of flame dancing over his skin. I didn't mean to, he whispered. Mysa looked at him with something like fear in her eyes. You can't control it, she said. Before Ration could answer, a new sound cut through the smoke. Not horns, not shouting. Something worse. A deep, rattling howl, like 1,000 voices screaming inside a hollow throat. From the broken alleys beyond the courtyard, they came. Not soldiers.
Not men.
Creatures of ash and bone and burning eyes, twisted reflections of life, drawn by the raw, uncontrolled magic. More than the ones they'd fought in the ancient ruin. Hundreds. And leading them was something worse, a towering figure stitched from the skeletons of beasts and men, crowned with horns made of charred gold. The Ashborn King. Mysa swore under her breath. We can't fight that, she said. Not even you. Brother Edrin stared, white with terror. Those are the Phoenix's rejected memories, the broken lives it cast aside. They hate all living things. Raishin felt cold inside, despite the fire in his blood. "What do we do?" he asked, voice shaking. Maisa grabbed his shoulder, fierce and wild. "We run," she said. "We find the next fragment. We get stronger, we survive." Behind them, the Ashborn howled again, and the broken earth trembled. Raishin clutched Malin close. He didn't know if he was saving the world anymore. He just knew he wouldn't let it end here, in smoke and ash. They ran into the burning dawn, the dead chasing them. They ran until Raishin's lungs burned, until Malin sobbed silently against his chest, until even Maisa stumbled, breathless and furious. Behind them, the Ashborn howled their frustration. But they did not pursue beyond the edge of the dead woods. It was as if some invisible line had been crossed, some ancient boundary they dared not pass. Raishin collapsed against a gnarled tree, heart hammering. Malin curled into his side, too exhausted even to cry. Brother Edrin sank to his knees, whispering prayers to a god Raishin no longer believed could hear them. Maisa paced, muttering curses, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Only when the last echoes faded did she finally slump down beside Raishin, wiping sweat from her brow. "You," she said, pointing a grimy finger at him, "are going to get us all killed." Raishin gave a weak, bitter laugh. "You're free to leave." Maisa snorted. "And miss the end of the world? Not a chance." For a while, they sat in silence, the burned landscape stretching around them in every direction. The sky above was a bruised purple, the first stars trembling into view, faint, reluctant. Raishin stared at his hands. The flames were gone, but he could still feel them under his skin, sleeping now, but not gone. "What happened back there?" he asked. Edrin lifted his head, his face hollow and old. "You opened too much of the Phoenix's memory," he said. "You pulled its anger, its sorrow, its broken past, into this world. The Ashborn are echoes of everything the Phoenix tried to burn away and failed." Raishin shivered. "And the more you use that power," Edrin said, voice grim, "the more those things will find you." "So what then?" Maisa snapped. "We just keep running until the gods come to finish us off?" "No," Raishin said, surprising himself with how steady his voice was. He lifted his gaze to the distant north, where, barely visible on the horizon, the shattered peaks of Starfall Mountain caught the last light of the dying sun. "We go there." Maisa followed his gaze, frowning. "Starfall Peak," she said. "The heart of the cycle." Edrin made a sign of protection with trembling fingers. "It is a cursed place." "Maybe," Raishin said. "But it's where this started. It's where it has to end." Maisa sat back, studying him. "You're different," she said finally. Raishin met her eyes. "I can't run anymore. If I don't understand this power, if I don't find a way to control it, more people will die." He thought of Eldrin, of the burning fields, of Malin's mother, lost in the smoke. He would not be the cause of another ruin. Maisa exhaled slowly. "North it is then," she said. "But be warned, farmer boy," she added, flashing a brief, grim smile. "Nothing that goes up Starfall Mountain comes back down the same." Raishin managed a faint smile of his own. "I don't think I was ever the same after that night in the woods." That night, they made a small fire, hidden between rocks. Edrin drew a rough map in the dirt, showing the shattered kingdoms they would have to cross, the Dead Marches, the outlaw city of Kaith, the Black Rivers, and finally the cursed slopes of Starfall. It would be a brutal, impossible journey. But Raishin felt something fierce and stubborn kindle in his chest. Not the Phoenix's fire. His own. As the fire crackled low and Malin slept peacefully for the first time in days, Maisa sat sharpening her daggers. Without looking up, she said quietly, "You know, there are other feathers out there. Other fragments. You're not the only one chasing them." Raishin frowned. "Who else?" Maisa's smile was thin and dangerous. "You'll see." Above them, the stars spun slowly in the wounded sky. The world held its breath. And far to the north, on Starfall's shattered crown, Something ancient and furious opened its eyes. Kaith was not a city so much as a scar. The once proud port had fallen long ago, abandoned by kings and priests alike. Now it sprawled like a wounded beast along the cracked coastline, a warren of collapsed towers, salt-stained docks, and alleys so narrow that sunlight barely touched the ground. Law had no place here. Only gold. And blood. Raishin stood at the edge of the shattered gates, Malin clinging to his side, Mysa slouching easily beside him. Brother Edrin muttered prayers under his breath, eyes flicking nervously to every shadow. "Welcome to Kaith," Mysa said with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Try not to look rich.
Or weak.
Or like you have anything worth stealing." Raishin adjusted his ragged cloak, pulling it tighter around him. "Good advice," he muttered. They stepped inside. The streets boiled with life. Vendors hawked dubious goods from broken carts. Rotted fruit, rusted weapons, dried strips of meat that might once have been rat or something worse. Children with knives darted through the crowd, laughing as they slipped purses from unwary travelers. And everywhere, the symbols of the new power in Kaith. The black flag with a crimson claw, the mark of the Red Hand Gang. "Stay close," Mysa said, hand never straying far from her daggers. They wound through the chaos, sticking to the shadows, making their way toward the crumbling heart of the city where, rumor said, secrets could be bought for a price. In a nameless tavern built from the ribs of an ancient ship, they found a contact. A one-eyed woman named Vela, who chewed bitter leaf and laughed like breaking glass. Mysa knew her, barely. Vela knew everyone for the right price. They traded a pouch of stolen coins for information. "You're not the first one sniffing around," Vela said, spitting a bloody seed into the fire. "Word is someone's been collecting artifacts. Old ones. Powerful ones." She leaned closer, yellowed teeth flashing. "Feathers." Raishin's blood ran cold. Mysa tensed.
Who?
Raishin asked. Vela shrugged. "Some call her the Glass Widow. No one knows where she came from, but she's gathering strength, buying loyalty, and she's got her eye on Starfall too." She tapped the side of her nose. "Careful, boy. In Kaith, power draws sharks, and you smell like blood." They left the tavern quickly, slipping back into the fog-choked streets. "Glass Widow," Raishin said, turning the name over in his mouth. Mysa frowned. "If she has other feathers, she could be stronger than you." "Then we have to find her," Raishin said. "Before she finds us." Mysa gave him a sharp look. "You're not ready for a war, farmer boy." Raishin touched the place where the twin feathers slept under his skin. "I might not have a choice." They didn't notice the watcher in the shadows. A thin figure, wrapped in crimson cloth, eyes glittering like coals. The message would be sent. The boy with the phoenix fire has come to Kaith, and the city, greedy and broken, would not let such a prize go easily. The map Vela had sold them was a lie. Raishin realized at the moment they passed the third dead-end alley, the crumbling stones slick with mold, the air reeking of stagnant water and old blood. Mysa cursed softly, blade drawn, her eyes scanning every window and shadow. "It's a setup," she said grimly. Behind them, boots scraped on stone. Ahead, in the narrowing alley, figures melted out of the mist, men and women armored in scavenged leather, their faces hidden by red scarves. "The Red Hand." Raishin shifted Malin behind him, heart pounding. "Give us the fire, boy," one of the bandits called. "And maybe we'll let the girl live." Mysa's laugh was sharp and cold. "You picked the wrong quarry." In a flash, she was moving, blades flashing silver in the gloom. Raishin pressed Malin back against the wall, searching for an exit. The alley was a killing box. Nowhere to run. He clenched his fists, feeling the feathers inside him stir, but fear held him back. What if he lost control again? What if he burned Malin? Burn Mysa? He froze. Steel rang against steel. Screams. The sickening crunch of bone. Mysa fought like a storm, beautiful, brutal, but badly outnumbered. "Raishin," she barked. "Move." The bandits were closing. Too many. Raishin grabbed a broken plank from the ground, brandishing it like a club, heart hammering. Then, a scream behind him. He turned. One of the Red Hand thugs had slipped past, grabbing Malin, pressing a knife to her throat. "Drop your weapons," the man snarled. Maisa froze, panting. Raishin felt the world narrow to a single, burning point. Malin's wide, terrified eyes. The glint of the blade.
No.
The feathers ignited. This time, Raishin didn't fight it. He called the fire. It rushed through him, but different now, not wild, not mindless. A river of molten gold, answering his will. His hands glowed, and in an instant, the world exploded. A blast of searing light knocked the thug back, the knife clattering from his hand. The Red Hand staggered, shielding their eyes. Maisa didn't hesitate. She struck, swift, precise, merciless. In moments, the alley was silent again. Raishin dropped to his knees, gasping. The fire receded, leaving him hollow but alive. Maisa knelt beside him, her hand gripping his shoulder hard enough to bruise. "You did it," she said, voice rough. "You controlled it." Raishin met her gaze, and for the first time, he saw something like real respect in her eyes. He looked past her at Malin, who ran to him, clutching his tunic. He held her tight. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'll keep you safe. I swear." Later, under the broken arch of a ruined fountain, Maisa stitched a shallow cut on Raishin's arm while Brother Edrin prayed quietly over Malin. "Kaith rotten through," Maisa said. "We can't trust anyone here." Raishin winced as the needle bit his skin. "You trusted Vela." Maisa snorted. "I trusted her to betray us. Just didn't think it would be so soon." She tied off the stitch with a jerk. "We need to move fast," she said. "Find the cathedral. Find what's left of the old faith, before the Glass Widow or the Red Hand catch our scent again." Far above them, from a shattered window high in the ruins, unseen eyes watched. A woman dressed in silk and shards of broken glass smiled thinly. The boy burned brighter than she expected.
Good.
It would make taking his power all the sweeter.